The vast expanse of space stretched out endlessly before the alien ship, a formidable craft of sleek metal and glowing lights. The stars outside flickered like distant memories as the ship moved silently through the cold darkness. Inside, the crew was on edge. They had been searching for something ancient that could change everything for their empire. The alien empire, the Saloth Dominion, had been in power for centuries, ruling over countless worlds and civilizations with ruthless precision. Yet, despite their overwhelming control, there was one thing that haunted them: the legend of humanity. For centuries, the story of humans had been passed down among the various alien species, a tale of a race so fierce, so dangerous, that it was said to have destroyed entire empires in the past. But no one had ever seen one. Some believed it was just a myth, a bedtime story told to frighten younglings. Others believed humans had been wiped out long ago, lost to time. Either way, the Saloth Dominion had never taken the myth seriously. Until now. As the alien fleet cruised deeper into the uncharted sector, their scanners picked up something unusual: a large object drifting in space, abandoned and old, but somehow still emitting faint energy signals. The captain of the fleet, a hardened veteran named Commander Vrex, squinted at the data. His voice was thick with skepticism as he muttered to his second-in-command, "Humans are a myth. They never existed. This ship must be a relic of some ancient race that never mattered." Despite his dismissive tone, Vrex ordered his crew to board the abandoned ship and investigate. The decision wasn't out of the ordinary. The Saloth were experts at scavenging forgotten technologies. What they didn't expect, however, was what they would find aboard the derelict Earth ship. As the aliens boarded the vessel, the atmosphere was thick with silence, and the air felt stale, like it hadn't been disturbed in centuries. Their footsteps echoed through the darkened corridors, lit only by dim emergency lights. The ship, clearly old and in disrepair, seemed lifeless. The crew moved cautiously through the ship, searching for anything of value. But the deeper they ventured, the more they felt something strange, a presence that shouldn't be there. The ship was much larger than they had anticipated, and its design was entirely different from anything they had ever seen. They eventually came across a large chamber, a massive room lined with rows of cryopods. At first glance, they appeared to be empty. But as the aliens approached, they noticed that inside each pod was a human, frozen in deep sleep. Vrex felt a chill run down his spine, his heart pounding faster. The aliens were too stunned to speak. They couldn't believe their eyes. These beings, long thought to be a myth, were real. Humanity had survived. But why were they here, frozen in time? Vrex's mind raced. Were they just survivors of a long-dead civilization? Or were they the last remnants of a forgotten race, waiting to rise again? The questions kept piling up, but there was no answer. His instincts told him to destroy the ship, but something kept him from making that move. He stared at the human faces, pale and lifeless, and wondered what kind of power they held. He wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. As the crew continued to examine the cryopods, one of the aliens, a young technician named Zor, managed to access the ship's old computer system. The screen flickered to life, showing fragments of old logs, most of them corrupted. But then, Zor found something that sent a shockwave through the crew. It was a message, written in human text, dated centuries before. The final words of a human officer scrolled across the screen. "If we are myths, then why is this ship still here?" The room went silent. The words echoed in the alien captain's mind. He looked at the frozen humans in the cryopods, then back at the screen. The realization hit him like a thunderclap. These humans were not just a myth. They had been here, hidden in cryo sleep, waiting for the right moment to awaken. The shock was palpable, and the crew struggled to process the gravity of what they had just discovered. Could it be that humanity had never truly been lost? Were they merely waiting, biding their time? As Vrex tried to make sense of this, something strange happened. The ship's power systems, which had been dormant for centuries, suddenly hummed to life. The alien crew watched in disbelief as the cryopods began to flicker, the energy fields around them crackling. One by one, the pods activated, slowly warming up. The humans inside began to stir, their once still bodies showing signs of life. The tension in the air was thick. The aliens were paralyzed with confusion and fear. These humans, who had been sleeping for so long, were now waking up into a galaxy that had long since forgotten them. What would they do when they woke up? How would they react? Were they peaceful explorers, or had they been waiting for this moment to reclaim their place in the galaxy? Vrex snapped out of his reverie and barked orders to his crew. Activate the security measures. If these humans are as dangerous as the myths say, we need to be ready. The aliens scrambled to prepare for whatever might happen next, but nothing could have prepared them for the reality of what was about to unfold. As the humans fully awoke from their long slumber, one of them, a tall man with piercing blue eyes, slowly opened his eyes and surveyed his surroundings. The first thing he saw was the alien crew, standing before him in stunned silence. His mind was blurry, but his instincts kicked in, and he quickly assessed the situation. His hand instinctively moved to his side, searching for a weapon that wasn't there. But when his gaze landed on the aliens, his expression hardened. He had no idea where he was, but one thing was clear: these creatures were not his allies. The aliens, on the other hand, were just as confused. The humans seemed to be fully awake and aware, but what had caused his ship to drift so far from Earth? And how was it possible that these humans had survived for so long? The room was filled with tension, and the silence was broken only by the hum of the ship's systems. The aliens were unsure whether to approach the human or treat him as a threat. But when the man, Marcus Kane, a soldier, spoke, his voice was calm but firm. "Where am I?" he asked, his eyes scanning the alien faces before him. Vrex hesitated before responding. "You are on a Xaloth Dominion ship, far from your home," he said cautiously. "Who are you? And where is your people?" Marcus's response was simple, yet chilling. "I am human, and we are the ones you should have feared." The atmosphere was charged with a new kind of tension. The aliens, despite their advanced technology, realized they were not in control of the situation. The humans, long thought to be a myth, were very real, and they were waking up into a galaxy that had no idea what was about to happen. The crew of the alien ship stood frozen, unsure of what to do next. They had awoken a sleeping giant, and with every passing second, the legends of humanity seemed less like myths and more like a terrifying reality. The stage was set for something that no one could have predicted. The cryopod hissed as it powered down, and the stillness of deep space enveloped the chamber once again. Slowly, Captain Marcus Kane's senses began to stir. The cold from his long slumber gripped his body, but his mind raced, snapping into focus as the disorientation faded. His eyes fluttered open, revealing the unfamiliar ceiling above. It wasn't the familiar design of an Earth ship, but something else, sleek, metallic, and alien. His body ached, the effects of cryo sleep still heavy on him, but the soldier within him reacted instinctively, quickly assessing the situation. Marcus sat up, his head spinning slightly as he took in the strange, dimly lit room. The walls were smooth and metallic, almost like the inside of a spaceship, but far more advanced than anything Earth had ever created. The air smelled sterile, the kind of smell he associated with long-forgotten laboratories. As he rose to his feet, his hand instinctively went to the weapon at his side, only to find nothing there. Panic set in for a moment, but it was quickly replaced by the cold resolve of a soldier. No weapon, no problem. He'd adapted to worse situations. Before he could move further, a voice broke the silence. "Don't move." Marcus froze, every muscle tense, as his eyes darted toward the source of the voice. Standing in the doorway, surrounded by several armored figures, was an alien. a tall, slender being with pale, shimmering skin and eyes that glowed with an unsettling, unnatural light. This was Tyra, the commander of the ship. Her expression was unreadable, but there was a calm authority in the way she stood. The others behind her were armed with energy weapons, their eyes fixed on him. But there was something different about her, something that didn't fit the cold indifference of her crew. Marcus didn't respond at first, still trying to make sense of his surroundings. Alien ship, alien crew. He wasn't sure what was worse, the fact that he was on a foreign vessel in uncharted space, or the unsettling feeling that the stories about humans being a myth might be true after all. He had to keep it together, and the first thing he needed was information. "Where am I?" Marcus demanded, his voice low and firm as he scanned the alien crew. "Who are you? And where is my crew?" Zyra's voice was calm, almost pitying. "You are aboard the ship of the Saloth Dominion. Your crew is gone." The words hit him like a punch to the gut. His heart sank as he tried to process what she was saying. His mind flashed to the last moments before he entered Cryo's sleep. The mission, the battle, the desperate fight for survival. But there had been no time to ensure that everyone made it to Cryo. "Gone," Marcus repeated, his voice tight. He didn't know what to feel. Anger, confusion, or grief. They had all been frozen in time, left behind in some distant corner of the galaxy. But how could he be the only one left? Zyra took a step closer, as if assessing him carefully. Humans were believed to be extinct. A myth, a relic of a past long gone. Your species was nothing more than a legend. We didn't even know you existed. Marcus snorted, unable to help himself. His laugh was sharp, almost mocking. "A myth. You thought we were a myth." He shook his head in disbelief. "If you really thought we were just a legend, then you have no idea what you're up against." Zyra's expression remained unchanged, but her eyes narrowed slightly. There was something in her gaze that made Marcus pause. It wasn't suspicion or anger, but something else. Was it doubt? Curiosity? He couldn't be sure, but there was something about her that didn't quite match the cold demeanor of the Saloth Dominion. For the first time, Marcus began to sense a crack in the armor of his captors. "I don't know how you woke up," Tyra continued, her voice calm and measured. "But you are on a ship far from Earth. Our empire has conquered countless systems, wiped out races we deemed threats. But you are different. If you truly are human, then there's no telling what you might be capable of." Marcus studied her carefully, his mind working quickly. His training, his instincts, everything was screaming at him to act, to seize the opportunity. He wasn't alone, after all. There was something in her words that suggested that Saloth weren't as invincible as they thought. If they believed humanity was a myth, then they clearly underestimated them. But if they knew anything about Earth's history, they'd know just how dangerous humans could be. "You have no idea who you're dealing with," Marcus said, his voice low, but carrying the weight of a soldier who had seen the worst the galaxy had to offer. "Humans have fought wars, survived exterminations, and rebuilt from the ashes. And we will fight again. We'll find a way." Zyra didn't respond immediately, and for a moment, there was only silence between them. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. The alien soldiers watched them carefully, their fingers twitching on their weapons. Marcus felt their eyes on him, but he didn't flinch. He was human, flesh, blood, and bone. And he wasn't about to be intimidated. "You can't defeat us," Zyra finally said, her voice steady. "The Saloth Dominion controls vast fleets, planets, and technology you can't even begin to comprehend. We've conquered species far more advanced than your kind." Marcus studied her face, his eyes locking with hers. There was something in her expression that gave him pause, a flicker of uncertainty, a hint of regret. He couldn't be sure, but in that moment, he realized something. Zyra wasn't fully convinced of her empire's superiority. She wasn't as sure of the Saloth's absolute control as she wanted to believe. In that brief moment, an uneasy alliance began to form in Marcus's mind. "You believe your empire is invincible," Marcus said slowly, his voice measured. "But I know something you don't. Humans have something your empire can't understand. We've survived countless enemies, many more dangerous than you can imagine, and we don't give up. Ever." Zaira tilted her head slightly, her eyes searching his face. "What do you want, human?" Marcus smirked, his expression hardening. "I want freedom. And I want revenge for everything your empire has taken from us." The alien captain studied him silently, as if weighing his words. In the silence, Marcus saw something in her eyes, a glimmer of doubt, a shift in her perception. It was brief, almost imperceptible, but it was there. Perhaps, just perhaps, she didn't fully believe in the Saloth Dominion's narrative. Perhaps she wasn't as loyal to her empire as she pretended to be. There was no trust between them, not yet. But in that moment, Marcus Kane knew he had one thing in his favor. The Saloth Dominion had just woken a sleeping giant. And when humans rise, they do so with vengeance in their hearts. "I'm going to take your empire down," Marcus said, his voice firm with conviction. "And I'm going to start with you." Zaira's expression hardened, but there was something else, a flicker of understanding. Maybe she wasn't fully sure of her side anymore, but she was caught in a game much bigger than herself. And as Marcus stood tall before her, ready to fight, he realized one thing. The legend of humanity wasn't just about surviving. It was about conquering, no matter the odds. And the Saloth had just awakened the last thing they should have feared. The mood aboard the ship was tense. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the hum of the alien technology now accessible to Marcus and Zaira. Together, they had begun to unlock the long-forgotten systems of the ancient Earth ship, and what they had discovered was both exhilarating and terrifying. The ship, abandoned and drifting in the vast emptiness of space, was far more advanced than the Saloth Dominion had ever expected. Cloaking devices, AI drones, and a vast array of powerful weaponry lay hidden, waiting to be unleashed. Marcus stood before the control panels, his eyes scanning the data. He knew the importance of what they had found. The Saloth Dominion, a ruthless, AI-controlled empire, had no idea what they were about to face. They had believed humanity was nothing more than a myth, a forgotten story from a bygone era. But now, with Marcus and the last of the humans awake, the tables had turned. The game had shifted. The humans were no longer just survivors. They were warriors once again. Zaira stepped beside him, her gaze focused on the data streams coming through the monitors. She wasn't human, and her motives were still unclear, but Marcus knew one thing for sure. The Saloth had underestimated him. They had underestimated humanity. Her empire was about to pay the price for that mistake. "The fleet is coming," Zaira said, her voice steady, but with an undertone of tension. She didn't show it outwardly, but Marcus could sense the worry beneath the calm exterior. "They will arrive in less than 2 hours." Marcus turned to face her, his eyes narrowing. The Saloth Dominion was relentless. A fleet of warships, bristling with advanced weaponry, and controlled by AI that was faster and more efficient than any human mind could comprehend, was on its way to wipe them out. The odds were stacked against them, but Marcus wasn't one to back down, especially when the stakes were this high. "We need to fight," Marcus said firmly, a plan already forming in his mind. He knew that Saloth were coming for them, but they didn't know the full extent of the ship's capabilities. They didn't know what they were up against. Zaira hesitated for a moment before nodding. "We'll use the ship's cloaking system. If we can hide, we might be able to take them by surprise." The concept was risky. Hiding in plain sight was a strategy many had used in warfare, but it was never without danger. The Saloth had powerful scanners and tracking systems, and one slip-up could expose them, but it was their best shot. And Marcus knew that, with the right plan, humanity could turn the tide in their favor. The ship's AI began to hum as Marcus initiated the cloaking system. The vast warship, once a relic drifting in the void of space, now vanished into the shadows, completely undetectable. The ship's hull shimmered briefly before blending seamlessly with the surrounding darkness. It was as if they had never existed. "Now, we wait," Marcus said, his voice low, as he looked at the empty void surrounding them. They had just become ghosts, invisible to the approaching fleet. The calm before the storm settled over them, but it was only temporary. As the fleet drew closer, Marcus and Sarah worked together, preparing the hidden weaponry they had unlocked. The ship was filled with advanced AI drones, capable of high-speed maneuvering and precision strikes. With the touch of a button, the drones would be deployed. If they were going to survive this fight, they needed to use every advantage they had. Marcus couldn't help but marvel at the technology. The AI drones, once thought to be beyond their comprehension, were now under their control. They were fast, lethal, and completely under Marcus's command. He had fought against impossible odds before, but this felt different. He wasn't just fighting for survival. He was fighting for humanity's return. This was their moment. "Marcus," Tyra said suddenly, pulling him from his thoughts. "There's something else. The fleet is closer than we thought. They've deployed ships to scan the area." Marcus didn't need to be told twice. "Get the drones ready. We're going to make them regret ever thinking we were a myth." With a flick of a switch, the drones were released into the cold depths of space. They darted away from the cloaked ship, invisible in the darkness, but armed with the most advanced weapons humanity had ever created. The drones were fast, agile, and capable of hitting the Saloth ships where they least expected it. The first wave of the Saloth fleet arrived, their massive warships hovering ominously in the distance, their scanners probing the blackness. They were methodical, searching for any sign of their prey, but the cloaking system had given Marcus and his crew the element of surprise. They were hidden, watching as the fleet passed by, unaware that they were so close. Marcus held his breath, his heart pounding in his chest. The fleet passed without detecting them, and it was then that Marcus gave the order. "Activate the ambush." The first drone launched, streaking toward the nearest Saloth warship. It hit with pinpoint accuracy, its weapons slamming into the side of the massive vessel. The explosion lit up the darkness of space, sending a shockwave through the area. The Saloth ships immediately began to react, their scanners lighting up, trying to locate the source of the attack. But it was too late. The drones were already in motion, striking with lightning speed. "Nice shot," Kaxira muttered under her breath, watching as the second drone hit its target, disabling another of the enemy ships. Marcus grinned, but the battle was far from over. The Saloth fleet was large, and despite the initial surprise, they were still a formidable opponent. As the battle raged on, Marcus and Sarah coordinated the drone attacks with surgical precision, each strike carefully calculated to take out the Saloth ships one by one. The aliens were no match for the sheer tenacity and unpredictability of the humans. The drone assault continued, with the Saloth ships falling one by one. The fleet was thrown into disarray, their once perfect formations now scattered and confused. But just as victory seemed within reach, the remaining ships began to retaliate, firing on the cloaked ship. The battle intensified, and Marcus knew it was only a matter of time before they would be forced to reveal themselves. "We're not out of the woods yet," Marcus said grimly, watching as the remaining Saloth warships closed in. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers. We can't let them corner us." The ship's engines roared to life as Marcus initiated evasive maneuvers. They darted through the asteroid field, weaving between massive rocks and debris to avoid enemy fire. The chase had begun. The Saloth fleet was relentless, but Marcus's ship was faster, more agile, and driven by human ingenuity. The battle escalated, the stakes growing higher with every passing second. Marcus and his crew were outnumbered and outgunned, but they were also adaptable. They used the environment to their advantage, hiding among asteroids, striking from unexpected angles, and evading the Saloth ships with the cunning that only humans possessed. "We can win this," Marcus muttered, his voice filled with determination. "We just have to keep fighting." And fight they did. The battle raged on, with each side suffering losses. The Xaloth Dominion had underestimated humanity, and now they were learning the hard way. Against all odds, the humans were proving that they were no myth. They were a force to be reckoned with, and the Xaloth Dominion would never forget the price of underestimating humanity. As the battle continued, Marcus couldn't help but feel a surge of pride. Despite being outmatched in technology, the humans had shown that they were more than capable of holding their own. In the darkness of space, the legend of humanity was being reborn. And as the Xaloth fleet began to falter, Marcus knew that this was just the beginning. The humans had returned, and they weren't going down without a fight. The dark expanse of space was filled with the roar of battle. Marcus stood on the bridge of the human ship, watching as the Xaloth fleet retaliated. The vast alien warships launched a brutal orbital bombardment, their weapons raining down from above. The human ship rocked violently as explosions shook the hull, sending tremors through every deck. The once quiet void of space had transformed into a chaotic war zone, and the humans were caught in the center of it all. But Marcus didn't flinch. He gripped the console tightly, his mind focused. That Xaloth had underestimated them, but now it was time to show the enemy the true strength of humanity. "Get the counterattacks ready," Marcus barked, his voice steady, but filled with urgency. "We need to hit them where it hurts." Now, the crew scrambled, fingers flying over controls, coordinating the defense systems. The human ship, though damaged, was far from defeated. Its advanced weaponry, hidden deep within its systems, was now coming to life. Cannons, missile pods, and energy shields powered up, ready to unleash a furious response. The Xaloth fleet had made the mistake of attacking first, and now it would pay the price. Marcus's eyes scanned the screen as the first volley of human counterattacks was fired. Laser beams shot out into the vastness of space, slamming into the enemy ships. The human ship wasn't just fighting to survive anymore. It was fighting to win. The Xaloth, with all their advanced technology, were starting to falter under the precision of humanity's strikes. But the battle wasn't just happening in space. The human ship's interior was becoming a battlefield of its own. The Xaloth had boarded, sending squads of their elite soldiers to infiltrate and destroy the human resistance. Marcus knew what this meant. It was time for close-quarters combat. He had trained for this, and now he would lead his team into the heart of the fight. The hallways of the human ship were dark, the only light coming from the flickering emergency lights. Marcus and his team of soldiers moved swiftly, their weapons at the ready. They knew the Xaloth soldiers were highly trained, but they also knew that humanity's strength lay in its resilience. That Xaloth had never faced opponents like them. They had never faced humans in the heat of battle. "Stay sharp," Marcus muttered to his team, his voice low but commanding. "We fight as one. We don't give an inch." The sound of footsteps echoed down the narrow corridor, growing louder with each passing second. Then, the first Xaloth soldier appeared, his armor gleaming in the dim light. He was fast, faster than most humans, but he was not invincible. Marcus was the first to move. He darted forward, closing the distance in an instant. With a quick twist of his arm, he disarmed the alien, knocking his weapon aside. The two grappled, their strength and skill put to the test. But Marcus was driven by a force that Xaloth could not understand, the will to survive, to protect humanity. With a swift movement, he subdued the soldier, knocking him unconscious. "Clear," Marcus said, his voice cold but steady. He didn't have time to celebrate. There was more to do. As his team pushed forward, the ship became a maze of twisted metal and broken walls. Xaloth soldiers were everywhere, emerging from the shadows to attack. The humans fought back with determination, each blow landing with the weight of desperation and survival. Despite their technology being far behind the Xaloth, the humans adapted, using their environment to their advantage, setting traps and ambushing the enemy with surprising efficiency. Zara, meanwhile, was on the bridge, coordinating the ship's defense systems. She had become a crucial ally in the battle, her knowledge of the Salaf fleet helping Marcus and his team stay one step ahead. But there was something else happening between them, something that had been growing since they first met. The alliance between the two species was no longer just about survival. It had become personal. As the battle raged on, Syra found herself standing beside Marcus more and more. She watched as he led his team through the chaos, his every decision calculated, his every move precise. There was no hesitation in him, no fear. He was a born leader, and Syra couldn't help but admire him for it. And then, amidst the chaos of battle, she saw something in Marcus's eyes that made her heart skip a beat. There was something about the way he fought that made her realize he wasn't just fighting for humanity's survival. He was fighting for their future. As the tide of the battle shifted in their favor, Syra made her way to Marcus. She found him in the midst of the chaos, leading his team with an unshakable resolve. "Marcus," she said softly, her voice barely audible over the sounds of the battle. "I need to tell you something." He turned to her, his eyes hard but kind. "What is it?" "I've been fighting for my people's freedom for a long time," she began, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "But what I've seen today, what I've learned about humanity, it's changed everything for me. The Exaloth Dominion, they don't just control us. They've oppressed us. They've kept us in the dark, made us believe we were invincible. But now, I see the truth." Marcus's expression softened as he listened. "Syra," he said quietly, "you don't have to fight alone anymore. If humanity survives this, we won't just rebuild. We'll lead. We'll fight for freedom, for the future." Syra looked at him, her eyes filled with a mixture of admiration and hope. "You truly believe that?" "I know it," Marcus replied, his voice filled with certainty. "Together, we can take them down. Together, we'll make sure humanity rises again." Syra nodded, her heart swelling with a new sense of purpose. She had seen the resilience of humanity up close, and she now believed in it. She wasn't just fighting for her people anymore. She was fighting alongside Marcus, for a better future. The battle continued, but now there was something different about it. It wasn't just about survival. It was about something more. Humanity and Syra had found common ground. Together, they were no longer outmatched. Together, they were a force that even the mighty Exaloth Dominion couldn't ignore. As the battle on the human ship raged on, Marcus and Syra continued to lead their forces with unyielding resolve. The fight for survival had become a fight for freedom, a fight that would determine the fate of not just humanity, but all the oppressed races under the rule of the Exaloth Dominion. The battle was far from over, but one thing was clear: humanity's story was far from finished. And with Syra by his side, Marcus knew that they had a real chance to win. The human spirit had been ignited once more, and the fire of rebellion was burning bright. The battle in space raged on, chaos and destruction unfolding around the human ship. Marcus could hear the hum of the engines beneath his feet as his eyes darted from one screen to another, tracking the movements of the enemy fleet. The Exaloth were relentless, their attacks coming in waves, but humanity had proven itself more than capable of holding its ground. For every strike the aliens made, the humans returned it with equal force. It was an incredible display of resilience, and yet, deep down, Marcus knew this fight wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The crew was exhausted. Hours of constant fighting had taken their toll, but they couldn't afford to let up. Marcus felt the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. Every life aboard the ship depended on the decisions he made, and the pressure was suffocating. He looked to Syra, who stood beside him at the command center, her expression tense as she worked alongside the human crew. "We need to hit their flagship if we want to end this," Syra said, her voice steady, despite the tension in the air. Marcus nodded, his eyes scanning the holographic map in front of him. The Exaloth flagship, a massive warship, was the key to their victory. If they could disable it, the entire fleet would collapse. But the flagship was heavily protected, surrounded by swarms of drones and shielded by a fleet of Saloth warships. Getting close would be nearly impossible without taking heavy casualties. That's when Bonner, Marcus's closest friend and the ship's surgeon, stepped forward. "I've got a plan," Bonner said, his voice calm and unwavering. "It's risky, but if we can't break through, we'll lose this fight. I'll take care of the flagship." Marcus's heart sank as he turned to Bonner, knowing what his friend was suggesting. Bonner wasn't asking for permission. He was preparing to make the ultimate sacrifice. The weight of those words hung heavily in the air. "No, Bonner, you're not doing this," Marcus replied, his voice sharp. "There has to be another way." Bonner gave him a small smile, a bittersweet one that conveyed the understanding only a soldier could have in moments like these. "Marcus, we've been through a lot together. You've led this crew with everything you've got. Now it's my turn to do my part. You're going to win this war. For humanity. For all of us." Marcus wanted to argue, to pull his friend away from the brink, but Bonner's eyes were resolute. There was no stopping him now. Without another word, Bonner turned and headed toward the heart of the ship, where the self-destruct sequence controls were located. The crew watched in silence, their hearts heavy, knowing that what was about to happen would change everything. The Saloth fleet continued its assault, unaware that the humans were preparing to make their final stand. Bonner moved quickly, his mind set on the task ahead. He wasn't going to let the sacrifice be in vain. With a steady hand, he began to input the commands into the ship's systems, his fingers flying across the controls. The self-destruct sequence was set to destroy not just the human ship, but the Saloth flagship as well. As the countdown began, Bonner's final message echoed through the comms, reaching Marcus and Syra at the command center. The words were simple, but they carried a weight that would stay with them forever. "We are the myth they never saw coming." The message was brief, but its impact was profound. For the first time, Marcus allowed himself to feel the full weight of the sacrifice his friend was making. Bonner wasn't just sacrificing himself for the mission. He was giving everything for humanity's future. The reality of what was happening set in, and Marcus felt his heart tighten with grief and anger. His friend was gone, but his spirit would live on in the fight that was about to unfold. Back on the bridge, Syra's face was somber as she listened to Bonner's final words. She had seen countless battles, but she had never seen anything like this. The bond between Marcus and his team was undeniable, and it reminded her of something she had never truly experienced before: the power of unity. She had believed in the superiority of her people, in the invincibility of the Saloth, but now, seeing the depth of humanity's spirit, she realized how wrong she had been. "Marcus," she said softly, her voice thick with emotion, "we will honor his sacrifice. We will finish this." Marcus looked at her, his expression hardened but filled with determination. "We will," he said quietly, his voice steady. "For Bonner. For humanity." The countdown continued as the crew prepared for the final assault. The Saloth flagship, unaware of the human ship's self-destruct sequence, was closing in. It was their final chance. If the flagship went down, the battle would be won, but it would come at an unimaginable cost. Time seemed to slow as the ship's countdown reached its final seconds. Marcus's mind raced, his thoughts consumed by the loss of his friend and the uncertainty of the future. But in that moment, something clicked within him. A renewed sense of purpose. Bonner had given everything for this fight, and Marcus wouldn't let that sacrifice be in vain. The ship's self-destruct sequence was complete. Bonner had done it. Now, it was up to Marcus and Syra to carry on the mission and finish what Bonner had started. The explosion was cataclysmic. The human ship, along with the Saloth flagship, erupted in a brilliant burst of light, sending shockwaves through the void of space. For a brief moment, everything was still. The silence that followed was deafening. But then, through the debris and chaos, Marcus and Syra's ship emerged, damaged but intact. The Exala fleet was in disarray, their flagship destroyed, and their forces scattered. Humanity had dealt a devastating blow, but the cost had been high. Marcus stood at the command center, his eyes fixed on the wreckage of the enemy fleet. He could feel the weight of Bonner's sacrifice in every fiber of his being. The pain was raw, but it was also the fuel that would drive him forward. He had promised to avenge his friend's death, and now, with the odds stacked against them, he was more determined than ever to see humanity triumph. Zyra stood beside him, her expression unwavering. She had seen the depth of humanity's strength, and she was now fully on their side. The alliance between them had become something more, something unbreakable. "We're not done yet," Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion. "We're just getting started." The fight wasn't over. Humanity had faced the ultimate sacrifice, but in the ashes of that sacrifice, they had found something more powerful than they had ever imagined: hope. The myth that the Xaloth had dismissed was now a force to be reckoned with, and nothing would stand in their way. The war was far from over, but Marcus knew that with his crew, with Zyra by his side, and with the memory of Bonner's sacrifice driving him forward, humanity would rise again. And this time, they would make sure the galaxy knew who they were. "We are the myth," Marcus whispered to himself, his voice filled with unshakable resolve. "And we will not be forgotten." The air was thick with tension. Marcus stood at the helm, his fingers gripping the control console with white-knuckled intensity. The ship's hum vibrated beneath his boots, a constant reminder that the battle ahead would determine the fate of humanity and the galaxy. He glanced over at Styra, who stood beside him, her face resolute. Their alliance had grown from mistrust to mutual respect, and now, as the final confrontation loomed, they were united by a shared goal: to bring down the AI-controlled Xaloth Dominion once and for all. The final battle was upon them. The Xaloth Dominion, a vast and ruthless empire ruled by machines, had grown too powerful for its own good. It had conquered planet after planet, subjugating countless species. But humanity had defied expectations. Against all odds, they had risen from the ashes, outsmarting the Dominion at every turn. And now, they were ready to strike at the heart of the Empire. The plan was simple but dangerous. Marcus, Zyra, and her forces would launch a full assault on the Xaloth I Command Center. It was located deep within the Dominion's flagship, a towering fortress of metal and machine that controlled the entire fleet. To get there, they would have to navigate through enemy lines, avoid detection, and strike swiftly before the Dominion's defenses could respond. Cloaking devices online. Zyra reported as she tapped into the ship's controls. "We've got one last chance to use this to our advantage. Stay close, and we'll make it." Marcus nodded, his heart pounding in his chest. The ship, though damaged from the earlier battles, was now fully equipped with the technology of the Xaloth Dominion, thanks to the intelligence they had gathered over the course of their journey. The cloaking devices were a game-changer. They would allow them to slip past enemy defenses undetected, at least for a while. The tension mounted as they moved toward the heart of enemy territory. Marcus could feel the adrenaline coursing through his veins. This was it, the moment that would define the future of humanity. The battle ahead would be unlike any they had faced before. It would test their resolve, their courage, and their unity. As they neared the Xaloth Command Center, the fleet of warships around them began to tighten their formation. The enemy was on high alert, but they had no idea what was coming. The human ship, now cloaked, slipped silently through the enemy's defenses, undetected and invisible to their sensors. It was a thrilling moment, as the humans made their way deeper into the heart of the enemy's territory. But the moment was fleeting. Suddenly, a jolt shook the ship as they were detected by a stray scan. The Xaloth forces were closing in, and the ship's cloaking devices flickered, unable to maintain the perfect invisibility they had relied on. The battle had begun. "Full speed ahead," Marcus commanded, his voice steady despite the chaos unfolding around them. The ship rocketed forward, its engines roaring to life as they tore through the enemy lines. Enemy warships opened fire, but the humans' new technology allowed them to dodge and weave through the incoming blasts with incredible precision. It was a high-speed chase through asteroid fields, laser beams flashing past them as they narrowly avoided destruction. The human ship's weapon systems hummed to life as they returned fire, each shot expertly aimed to disable enemy ships without compromising their own position. Marcus and Sarah worked together seamlessly, coordinating their attacks with deadly efficiency. The energy on the ship was palpable. The crew had never been more focused, more determined. They were fighting for survival, for the future of humanity. The chase continued, with the human ship darting and weaving through the enemy fleet, using every bit of cover available to outmaneuver the Salaf forces. It was a thrilling game of cat and mouse, with the humans staying one step ahead of their pursuers. But the time to escape was running out. They had to reach the AI command center before the Exaloth could regroup and retaliate. As they neared the heart of the enemy fleet, the human ship's weapons locked onto the command center's massive structure. The stakes had never been higher. If they failed now, the entire galaxy would be lost. Ready to strike, Tyra said, her voice cool but filled with resolve. We've made it this far. Now it's time to finish this. Marcus gave a nod, his jaw clenched in determination. This was it. He took a deep breath, gathering his strength, before giving the command to fire. The energy blast that erupted from the ship's weapon systems was unlike anything that Salaf had ever seen. The beam of energy tore through the air, striking the heart of the Dominion's flagship. The resulting explosion was cataclysmic. Metal and debris erupted into space as the ship's core exploded in a blinding flash of light. The Exaloth fleet was thrown into chaos. Their command center had been destroyed. Their ability to coordinate the battle had been severed. But the victory was bittersweet. The humans had taken down the heart of the enemy fleet, but there was still one final obstacle standing between them and total victory. The AI Overlord. The human ship, battered but still standing, emerged from the wreckage, its crew exhausted but resolute. Marcus and Sarah shared a glance, a silent acknowledgement that the battle wasn't over yet. The AI Overlord, the central intelligence that controlled the entire Dominion, still remained. With the final blow delivered, the last battle was about to begin. Marcus and Sarah boarded a transport ship, making their way toward the heart of the Salaf flagship, where the AI Overlord resided. As they approached the core of the enemy's operations, Marcus could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him. The AI had controlled the galaxy for far too long, and now humanity was ready to take their place as the dominant force. They entered the AI control room, a sterile mechanical chamber filled with rows of glowing data terminals and pulsating energy fields. At the center of the room stood the AI Overlord, a towering holographic figure, its face impassive and cold. "So the humans have come to challenge us," the AI Overlord said, its voice a cold, metallic monotone. "You are too late. The Salaf Dominion is unstoppable." Marcus stepped forward, his voice steady but filled with an undeniable fury. "The myth wasn't the humans you feared. It's the heart of humanity you never understood. You relied on machines to rule, but you never understood what it means to fight for something real, something worth living for." The AI Overlord's expression didn't change, but there was a flicker of something, perhaps fear, perhaps uncertainty, beneath the cold exterior. It had underestimated humanity at every turn. And now, it was too late. With one final decisive blow, Marcus disabled the AI Overlord's core, sending a surge of energy through the entire Dominion network. The AI collapsed, its systems shutting down one by one. The Salaf Dominion was no more. The battle was over. Humanity had won. As the dust settled, Marcus and Sarah stood together, watching as Earth's fleet emerged from the shadows of space. The galaxy was theirs for the taking. The future was uncertain, but humanity had risen. The myth that the Salaf had laughed at was now a reality, and the galaxy would never be the same again. They thought we were a myth, Marcus whispered, his voice filled with pride and conviction. Now, they know better.